today. So just before we get started, I have a couple of our general housekeeping. So while during today's webinar, we will have all attendees will be on mute while the presentation is in progress. The webinar is being recorded. It's going to be available on demand. You'll be able to find it on the Payslip website, our YouTube channel, and it will also be available as a podcast on Spotify. We will share the deck with everyone by email after the event, and we have the Q&A box available. We will have time at the end of the webinar for question and answers, but please feel free to input your Q&A in the chat box, and I'll be managing them as we go along. So before we get started, I'd like to introduce our two guests, Mary Holland and Pete Tiliakos. Mary and Pete, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves and your background?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mary.
Do you want to go ahead? Okay.
Ladies first.
Ladies first. Hi, I'm Mary Holland. I'm a CPP from the Payroll organization in the US. And I recently retired last year, kind of in June, but I'm still very involved in the global payroll industry, which became my passion about 15 years ago, unknown to myself that I would like it, but I have a background in finance and payroll and stock equity, and love global payroll and love working with people that love the space and connecting on all of the items around the world related to that. So excited to be with Pete today. So Pete and I have connected on many things, and so I'll turn it over to you, Pete.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Excited to be here, and congratulations on your retirement. So yeah, Pete Tiliakos, maybe some of you know me. I'm an industry analyst. I study the marketplace and work very closely with many of the vendors across HCM, payroll, global EOR, and fintech. You might have seen some of my research, my blogs, maybe my podcast, HR and Payroll 2.0. And right now we have some fantastic research going on. The Payroll Profession Confidence Index is running over at payrollinfluences.com. But longtime practitioner, longtime consultant, and just very passionate about helping payroll move forward. And I think we're entering in one of the best times ever to be a payroll leader with all the technology and investments that are here. So excited to share that with you guys and learn with you. So privileged to be here.
Great, thank you both. So just before we get started, I'm going to actually kick off one of our polls. So just bear with me one moment. And
I love these.
Start this poll. So first poll of the day is should be live now. So as a global payroll leader, what are your priorities for 2025? So we'd like to hear what you as the attendees have on your priority list for 2025. So is it automation? So automating your payroll processes to reduce manual work. Are you looking at AI to optimize your payroll operations? Is efficiency important to you? So improving your employee experience through your payroll efficiency. Is integration top of your list, integrating with your HR and finance systems? Or maybe it's compliance, so enhancing your compliance and risk management. So I'll leave that up there for a couple of minutes just to get the audience.
My feeling is it might be all the above.
Yes, yeah.
I was just going to ask you. I was just going to ask you that, Pete, what your thought was. But as Eva was reading these through, I was thinking they're probably all of the above, and some of the things that our senior leadership is looking for from a strategic view and vision of where they want to be. It's not just this year as they move forward, as they look at their roadmap, because all of these items, I think, are in the media every day, right? We know we hear a lot about AI every hour on the AI, but it's really looking at that efficiency, the integration kind of, and then the big compliance world, the compliance piece especially, and risk. When we look in globally, it's a huge project just in itself. As you know, Pete, it's like, which one are you going to tackle? I guess it's kind of determining what you can do and kind of evaluating where you are today.
Yeah. No, all of these have a very a de-risking theme to them, right? All of these solutions are important. They're becoming standard, and I think everyone's looking at how they can utilize these to future-proof payroll. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the answer is, though.
Right.
I am.
It looks like everyone has answered, so we'll just share those results now. And You should be able to see that there, that automation has come in on top there, which personally at Payslip we love to see because automation is in everything we do. So that's interesting that people are still really focused in on reducing their manual workload.
Yeah, yeah. It'd be fair to even clump those first three together.
Yeah,
As a
you're
group.
right.
But interesting to see, or not interesting, but as I expected, compliance top of mind. I don't think that's ever going to go away. That's, but that's where these things above compliance on that list can help, each one of those. So can contribute.
Yeah, I agree. You could put three of them together because that's all part of the automation of the journey that's happening today, and what you can do, because there's always been so much manual work. And if you start to talk to people out in the industry, they'll tell you what they did manually years ago and have they moved forward to any automation. There's been some, and of course it's really as who are the providers you're working with and what automation do they have. So it's kind of checking that out as you check out the direction you want to move forward with it. Compliance plays a big piece in that one too.
Yeah, I love it.
Love it.
Okay, I will go back to our deck. Okay, and that should be visible for you guys. So, Mary, would you like to take us through the agenda for today?
Certainly. Thank you, Aoife. So excited, as I already mentioned, to have Pete. We're going to be talking today about people, the people in your organization, your employees, the people you connect with, talking about the upskilling, the change management that needs to happen as we go through some of the changes that are happening as we move into the future. We'll be talking about process. We already know that manual work was one of the top on the poll, which we all would agree that that's something that needs to be reduced. It's not fun to do manual work. It's not even rewarding in some cases. It's rewarding in the fact that you were able to get the payment out to the employee timely. But we want to look at efficiencies for our organization. And then, of course, technology is always the big area. What do we have available that we can enable, right? So technology won't be a solution in Excel. It will enable us. But AI and machine learning for global payroll is key. The automation, the global reporting. What global reporting do you have? How are, even in the simple thing is how does your employee and your people have that reporting or view of to get their pay slip right? And in this world we live in today, we cannot not think about data security and privacy. It continues to grow. And it's really something, as we look across our organizations, that we play a key role because we have all of the PII information about employees that we need to keep secure, and all the fun we have in the world of having different rules, from GDPR to a privacy rule over in China or Brazil. And then we'll talk about some takeaways, and then we'll give it time for question and answers. So we'll pop into people first. And so when we talk into people, we're going to talk about three areas. And so, Pete, what do you think about upskilling the current staff and teams on your in payroll today? And what are some of the things they should be thinking about upskilling themselves as an individual? Or if you are a leader, how can you do that?
Yeah. Well, at the beginning of our show, we talked about the research that I'm doing, right? We have the Payroll Profession Confidence Index running again this year. And one of the key things that came out last year was very clear, was that a few things I think around this subject. One, the current folks that we have in the industry, one of the top areas we asked, how could you be more empowered by your leadership? What would be the best ways for them to help you? What would be the best ways for them to invest in you? And the top answer on that investment was education, training, and skills. And I think that's a clear cry that, hey, we have an opportunity to look. You all know, as payroll leaders, it's constant, right? I remember when I was a payroll leader, it seemed like every week I was reviewing something, and back then it was much more manual. I was reviewing some sort of new change, trying to keep up with all of it, right? Trying to make sure we had our systems in order. We were always testing, updating tables. And so those things are coming hotter and heavier and faster. And if you're global, right, that's at scale. You're really managing and trying to cover a lot of ground. And so I think when you think about that complexity and that starvation, if you will, of leaders starving for those new insights, right? And that's not just the compliance part, but also how the role is changing and how their teams are being shaped. One of the things I think is really critical is going to be for payroll to lean into their technology, lean into their data, and leverage that to shift their skills away from being, maybe process driven to being more of a leader that is strategically advising the business. So I think there's a couple of things that are converging. One, we need more help, right? We need more skilled folks coming into the industry. We're losing a lot of folks over time. So we need fresh talent. We need education, right? We need resources to help the practitioners that are out there to be able to stay ahead of what's coming and what's next and what's now and here. And then we also need that technology to enable them to start shifting their careers and their mindsets towards a different role, a very what I would call almost like a big four, almost like a consultant, Deloitte, KPMG, any outside consultant coming in and giving a business the pathway to the next thing. I think that's going to be payroll's role, right? Helping the organization achieve and get over these obstacles that may be in the way of them achieving their strategic goals. And that's going to be payroll helping them from a compliance perspective, from an expertise perspective, and bringing data to the table to help the organization advance along its path. So I think the role, again, the role is changing. The skills aren't coming in sometimes to the sector. And there's a lot there, right? That technology can help with, but we also have to educate and prepare folks. Long answer,
Pete,
I know.
No, that's okay. Pete, one of the things and the upskilling is like looking at yourself. What do you feel comfortable with? What are some of your fears, right? About a new technology or a change that's going to happen. How can you best get that wrapped around your head that this is what's happening? Because in a lot of cases, as we move through these transformations, it's not really about the person that's doing the role. It's really what the company needs to be strategic and be positioned for the future. And sometimes it's not just this year. It may be what the roadmap is for the organization. So I see us as strategic leaders, and that brings about the piece of change management, right? So we all know how we like change or don't like change. I always sometimes use the example is you can be in an organization and you move someone's desk and the world has ended on that one simple move of the desk. But you know best how you handle change. And I see the world is always changing, right? And so how you as a person and your organization handles change is important. It's really important how your organization handles change, because as we'll be talking about technology, we can suggest or give you ideas of great technology to bring in, but if your company isn't ready for that change, it may not be successful. So it really depends on the organization a little bit, what the organization and senior leaders have. What does it mean to you? And that finally goes into the employee empowerment. And we want to empower the employee to have access to their information real time, of course. And that means it's their information, right? So their pay slips, their reporting, their annual reports, all of that information, updating that information. So we're empowering them to own it, but we're also empowering the teams to be able to look at upskilling, better processes, and use of technology and all of those items as we move forward. So Pete, I don't know on the employee empowerment, if you have anything else you want to add on that.
Yeah, I would just say that I think that you have to bring up a great point about the change management part of this. I think part of the role, and you said something really interesting recently about being business leaders. I heard a CHRO say that recently about HR and payroll leaders saying, look, you're business leaders who happen to work in HR and payroll. And then once you begin to think that way, right, the change is inevitable, and you're gonna make progress. And so I think a big part of what the role is going to become for payroll is going to be change agents, right? Helping the company move from A to B. And, you know, when you think about that skilling part, someone said the other day, I heard someone call AI a performance enhancing drug, not really a drug, but I think that's a really great way to look at it, right? Like, I think I gave a talk recently about payroll innovation, and I was talking in there about how payroll can use these new tools, earned wage access and AI and other things, to really be the magicians that they've sort of been asked to be over the years, right? For wrong reasons and not having the help and the technology. But now they can really make things happen in a very efficient way, in a very modern way, that allows them to focus on helping the organization change and move forward and progress. And you're absolutely right. On the other total opposite spectrum here of the employee experience, I think there is a significant amount of lenses coming into the workforce now that expect to have more autonomy and control over their payroll, their compensation, their payroll results. And they want that, right? They want that experience of being able to own their data and own their careers and own their pay. And why not, right? Payroll can offload that to them and focus again more on that, being change agents and being those business leaders and helping the organization progress. So I think all these things really, really are working together.
So let's move on to process. So that's the piece that we talked about, manual and those pieces, the manual work. And so when we look at processes, boy, has the payroll industry changed from the first time I was in payroll or was involved in that. I didn't enter my career in payroll, entered it in finance, but then got exposed to it. But the automation has definitely changed the world we live today with all of the vendors and the services that we have today. Just even, believe it or not, having the piece of where cloud is gone, AI has gone, and that we'll be talking about that. So we're looking, you know, at reducing the manual work. As we mentioned, manual work you can get it done. I'm not going to not say you can't do it, and it can get done, but it's no rewarding to say I spent 5 hours totaling up this spreadsheet or ticking and tying the different pieces of payroll. I once was working with a company where their review of their calculations was they reviewed every single person, and it took them almost a half a day. They went line by line by line. So that was so inefficient. And the finance manager in that particular company couldn't believe somebody was doing that. And they asked me to take a look at what was happening. I couldn't believe it when they were actually telling me that until I sat through the exercise of 4 or 5 hours, right? So looking at what you're doing today, is there a different way? Sometimes we have to make that presentation to our senior leaders and suggest that different way, right? So how are we going to present that? Because it may be something that they've been doing for years, right? So sometimes we have a lot of legacy that we have to change, but being open and looking at it does sometimes take some courage to say we need to do it a different way. But that's okay. Let's have that discussion. And as we move forward, the integration with HR, the accounting systems, the software, and your payroll, these are huge rewards for us in the payroll industry to have that integration, to have the data coming in from the source. And if we look at the source of bringing it in, if you just look at if you happen to be a Workday client, bring in your information from the information the day they were hired, their compensation changes, their job changes, all of that coming in through over to your payroll processing, and then of course off over to the accounting, because the world of accounting is extremely important because we need to know what the expenses are, and having that integration gives you the ability to have real-time reporting, changing the process of doing spreadsheets and consolidating spreadsheets. Sometimes you hear stories of people getting asked, you know, how many bonuses did you pay globally in 50 countries last year, right? And first of all, what is the year? But you define that. But then you hear the person said, I spent 3 days consolidating or 4 days consolidating because I have 4 or 5 vendors to be able to get that information. So yes, it was an Excel project, but it wasn't efficient in the process. So what do you have today to look at that? So Pete, what's your thoughts on risk management?
Yeah, well, I think at its very, if you synthesize payroll down to its smallest terms, right? That's what we're doing here, right? We're keeping the company out of trouble. and avoiding the next thing. And so I think it's a very critical foundational part of what payroll is responsible for, and the company's looking to them to help with. So all of these things I think come very, very full circle in helping that. What I would say is in my research, there's two things I've learned about, particularly about payroll transformation. One, about any transformation, really. One, a lot of organizations will try to take what they do today and cram it into new, like past ways into new technology. And there needs to be a bit of a that's where the diet comes in, right? That's where the change comes in. A lot of times it's about adopting new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things, and getting rid of those sort of old, outdated, maybe workaround type ways that existed. But there's also a compromise that needs to happen between what I would say is best practice and best fit, right? In any transformation, you've got to really rationalize, look, this is what we have to accomplish. This is what, there are certain things that are going to come about and payroll is a little bit more static where, the outcome has to be the outcome. But particularly in HR transformation, you will sometimes see companies, avoid adopting a technology or avoid turning on a certain part of the full capabilities. And I think that's where they really fall short of making that change. And changing means adapting to new ways, looking at new opportunities. And I think the success comes when you're able to open your mind and say, look, how can we reinvent the way we do things for the future? Because the way we are doing it might not be sustainable, with legacy systems. So that's what I think the essence of technology coming together to help with that risk management is really key. But you've got to lean into that change.
Yeah, and the other thing, Pete, I think is important is where's the company in their journey? Do you have to take small steps, or can you take
and where you're trying
steps?
To get to,
and where you're trying to get to, and those are things that you may know that you need to take the big steps, but your company may need to take what we call baby steps or steps to get confidence that it's working, and then you can move forward to the other things. So it's really kind of looking at that and then explaining the risk of what's happening, and really, if we go into the bottom two is, how efficient is our payroll operations, right? Does it take us days and months to to be able to get a report, or how long does it take even to get that payroll processed if there's a change or new hires? Sometimes hear that you have to have the new hires by X date, otherwise they're not going to get paid to the following pay period. What does that mean for that employee experience that we just talked about on the people side of the shop? And we did touch already a little bit on data privacy and security, and that's part of our risk management. That is, I cannot underplay this one. Please, in your processes, what you're looking at, if you have any concern, we need to bring that up, and that needs to be addressed to senior management. But that also plays in as you're looking at the process of selecting that payroll provider and the payroll services you're going to use, is how efficient are they? How are they managing risk? What is their data security? It's really kind of, sometimes it's like doing that homework and understanding what's happening and asking questions. And even though you may be working with company X, it never hurts to find out what's going on with company A or B, because you need to make sure that your company is benchmarking and looking at the future and looking at automation, the integration, the AI, all of those pieces. Ask questions. What's on their roadmap? That's part of your process journey. So, Aoife, let's go on to our favorite topic, as always, is technology. Technology has really changed everyone's life. If we look at our personal and our business, definitely has changed the way we do things and process payroll. So I would automatically just tell you, if you don't hear anything about AI or in a given day, then you might be in a little igloo in the snow, and there's no internet or no connection to that, because that is the number one topic that we've talked about. Boy, has it changed everybody from payroll to any pieces of the business and the machine learning. And there's so much in that particular space. So, Pete, what do you when you talk to some of your people that you talk to, the professionals that you're working at, what are their thoughts on AI? I think there's sometimes fear the unknown of what's happening, security, right? So
Yeah.
the security of that.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the key things we asked in our research. I keep mentioning the Payroll Profession Confidence Index because it's just so important. But that's one of the first things we asked. It is about the sentiment of the marketplace. How are you doing? How are you performing? Or where are you performing well? But one of the key things is how do they feel in terms of the empowerment of technology and the potential of that? And I'd say it's about a 70-some% of folks feel quite positive. So I'd say there's a cautious optimism, right? There's a lot of as we, just back on that last slide when you were talking about data privacy, it's like on the one hand, AI is doing a lot to help with that, but it's also doing a lot to threaten that. So I think it's the same thing, right? There's a lot of opportunity here. I think folks can see the light at the end of the tunnel in making payroll what it always should have been. But at the same time, it is a threat to the way we do things, which is change, and people get concerned about that. But what I would say, I was having this conversation with someone the other day is, don't look at these as threats. Look at these as tools, right? Again, look at these as another way for you to solve problems and be a hero. And I think that the more you can lean into them and the more you can engage them and figure out how to work with them, AI is a super powerful tool, but it is just another tool that we have now at our disposal, just like we had, the internet in the past and cloud and many other things. I think it's a mega, a weapon, a massive weapon, if you will, a nuclear bomb of tools. But the point is there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think if we see those use cases and go, yeah, this is where it can help me, this is where it can help us, and augment you, right, and be that extra hand. I think it's all the better.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think don't be afraid, right? So if you think about when
just another tool.
It's just another tool. It's a tool in our toolkit. It goes along with the integrations that we have with automation, as we talked about, our process of having the automation and the real-time reporting that's extremely important. So what are your providers? Do they have real-time reporting? Can you pull something within 20 minutes? If you look at, I'm just going to give like a simple example. If you look at some of the the chat GBTs and some of the Geminis and some of those out there, you put a question out there and you get something in less than a minute. And it could be a question: how do I rewrite this letter to an employee, right? How do I communicate to this employee? And remember, if English isn't your first language, it is a tool. It is a tool to help you write it in English. It's not going to be 100% perfect. You're going to edit it, but remember, those are things that you have at your fingertips. And what are they? And how do you use the tools, right? So what reporting do I have? Do I use some of the AI tools out there? What automation do I have? And that goes along with your vendor software, right? So your vendor software, there's many things they're doing out in to be able to provide services and support to you as a client. So what's out there? Have you even looked at what's available? Sometimes people don't look at what's available because we get busy. We're too busy in the manual work to be able to think about what tools do we have available. So kind of doing that survey of the tools, and any piece of any of the processes, the technology, the people, we're always going to have the data security piece of it because payroll has that information. And employees and people that are working with us want to keep that information secure. We also know we have a lot of people out there that are hackers and can get in and all of those pieces. But we need to make sure that we're doing, as we talked about, risk management on the last piece, making sure that we have that under control. And as I previously mentioned, any concerns, bring it up, because a small concern can be fixed fairly quickly. But if it keeps growing, it may be something that's going to expose your company. And that's one of the things that, as payroll leaders, we're responsible for the data security of the employees' records that we're taking in. So technology is our friend. It has drastically changed. I would say it's drastically changed from, if you remember the first time you had Excel, you had the internet, you started using that. Just look at your phone, what's happening with what services are on your phone today. And some people aren't even using the computer. So you can tell where technology has gone for the employee. And that's one of the things as we enable the people, do we have those available to our employees so that they can have access in a secure way? So let's move on to the future. And this one, Pete, I'm going to turn it over to you because we're going to talk about what our future looks like. And we're excited because we're already here. As you said, it's a great era to be in payroll today in 2025. Think about what it look like if you talk to anybody that might be in the 90s. It was nothing like this.
Yeah, we've come a long way. We talked about that a little bit earlier. We've come a long way, baby, right? But really, I mean, you think about, kind of this process age and then this automation age that we moved into, where desktop computers and certainly cloud, created a lot of speed for payroll. It helped in a big way, but it didn't necessarily get us to where we are now. And I think that's where we're moving into. And it's not just payroll, right? It's everywhere. It's in HR. It's all over our personal lives. We're getting into much more of an augmented, personalized age where we're being sort of prescribed and nudged and provided insights all along the way. And you can see that in anything that you're doing, whether you're looking at your Payslip now, whether you're going to buy a car, whether you're looking at taking a trip. There's bots and AI and helpers all over that you can engage, sometimes provided by the solution provider that you're getting that from. So I think it's just become sort of part of what we do, right? It's sort of living with us, if you will. It's the reason why, you have the next perfect song surface to you on Spotify, or Netflix recommends the next best thing. The algorithms and the AI are working to look at what you're doing and saying, hey, based on the way you've behaved, this is probably something you'd be interested in. And so when you think about that on a micro scale, it's kind of a small use case, but when you start taking that into a bigger picture, you can imagine how that can become very impactful for HR, payroll, and others. And so when you think of AI and you think of ML, where we're headed, and what we're going to be doing with it, you're looking at, again, that personalization, that predictiveness, right? The ability to take data sets, current and past, and predict what might happen in the future to help an organization seemingly see around the next corner. And so I think one of the key things that payroll is ultimately going to lend to the business is not just that risk management and employee experience, but it's also going to lend its insights to the broader insights that the business has to help it make good decisions, see around the next corner, and use payroll's expertise to help them make good risk guided decisions about their strategic paths. And so look at AI as a helper. Again, it's a tool. It should be something that's augmenting you. Again, prescribing to you the next best solution for a problem, helping to understand and curate your information and get you to the right answer. And so the more you can figure out how to incorporate these tools and other innovations that are coming into payroll, digital payments like earned wage access, or the advanced APIs that we now have, right? Payslip has the global payroll connect that's moving payroll data back and forth with Workday in real time. Above and beyond what we've seen. So all of these things are just incredibly important to the ecosystem, and really what's going to power that agility and that insight and that experience for the employees. So lean into it, right? That we're here. We're finally here. The ticking and tying days should be over. Anything being built now in the marketplace is being built with AI and ML at the core. And it absolutely should be, right? It should be augmenting us and helping us out. So returning your valuable skills back to something more appropriate, like helping, again, champion change and help the organization make good decisions.
Yeah, it definitely. Exciting times. Yeah, it's exciting times because it's definitely changing, or we're getting the information that we need real time, right? With the tools that we have, we're able to support the business. We're able, if you simple things about compensation in a particular country, being able to provide that information to a comp team if they're doing new hires. Think about the mergers and acquisitions of that you want to do. You're moving forward on. It's really going to help kind of change what's actually happening. And you may start small or you may start large, but don't be, I think the big message that I want to send out is don't be afraid. It's a tool. It's a tool that we've gone on our journey with, and we'll continue to have new tools that are out there. And what is that going to look like, right? You mean, who knows? I mean, if we look at, when Tesla came out with some of the tools they had with their car, a lot of people were afraid to do that. Now we have self-driving taxis that are out there. I haven't taken one yet, but there is some people that are taking those in San Francisco. It's a key thing. So what does that look like? And that's different. It's just the way, as you mentioned, Pete, it's affecting everything we do. So, okay, Eva, we can move on to, we have another poll.
I love polls.
Great. I'm going to break now for a quick poll.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's just open it up now. One moment. Okay, poll number 2. And because we were just on the topic of AI, let's find out what the audience think about AI. So what excites you most about AI and automation in payroll? Is it reducing manual tasks and saving time, improving the accuracy and minimizing payroll errors, enhancing compliance with real-time updates and validations, gaining actionable insights with analytics, or elevating your employee satisfaction with faster, seamless payroll processes? Again, it probably could be all of them together as well.
Yes.
That's what I was gonna say, Pete. I think if I asked you, I would, or if somebody asked me, I'd say I think it could be all, because all of them are the advantages of the journey that you might go on with them, depending on where you are and how you're starting. Right, it's the tool. How do you use a tool?
Yeah, I think what everyone should be doing is imagining, all the ways in which, think of the use cases unique to your business or your payroll that are pains. Just start there and think of, like, how could AI help me with that? And when you start thinking that way, you'll start seeing it. And I think there's opportunities with everything, that all of the innovations that are coming online for payroll, that you can look and see how you can solve problems. So yeah, any of these would be, any and all of these would be outstanding for opportunity for AI. My money is going to be on that folks are going to lean into the accuracy and compliance. That's normally where payroll's head is, right? The lens. It's in our nature. It's in our DNA.
It's in our DNA.
Yep. Can't help it.
Well, Pete, you bring up one thing on all of those. I think the important thing too is to ask you as a leader, ask the teams that you're working with, right? You're working with global teams around the world. What does that look like in their organization? Because it may be different in China versus Brazil versus Ireland versus the US. What does that look like? And so getting people to feel comfortable and really sharing, like some of those, if we look at manual work, we may not, as a leader, have any idea some of that manual work that's being done in some of those locations. But let's look at the results then.
Let's see what we get.
You should be able to see them there. So we have, can you guys see them? Great. Yeah. So we had coming out on top is, as you correctly predicted, accuracy and minimizing payroll errors. And then in behind it, reducing manual tasks. This is where I always see the benefit of AI is saving time and reducing manual tasks.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get a robot to mow my lawn. That's what I want.
Yeah.
I know they have them. I just don't trust it yet. I'm not trusting of the very particular about my yard.
Okay, we'll go.
You can get people that you can have Roomba do your floors. So, that's kind of like a robot that sometimes people have to get used to that one. So let's move forward to how we can look at building our 5 essential pillars for building a modern foundation. So Pete, I'll turn this over to you, because I'll have you walk through the pieces of that, and then I'll provide some confidence. But this is a slide is, I would say, key. If you get nothing out of the entire presentation, this one is a key slide to have on your desk, a key slide to share with your team, and also kind of the goal of what you're trying to achieve as a center of excellence. So over to you, Pete.
Yeah, look, this is a big part of my point of view that came out of the Payroll Profession Confidence Index. And I keep mentioning that, but I'd love for you all to take it for sure over at payrollinfluences.com. But look, this is the future of the role. And this, I think, if you look at the way we wrote that report, and the purpose of that report is to speak to the C-suites of the world, to say, listen, you have to start thinking of payroll as a different strategic enabler than you have. Is payroll ever going to be strategic? Probably not. but it will lend or impede strategic outcomes. And they are absolutely vital to achieving those things. And so what I would say to you is that I think there's these 5 things that organizations should be investing in, but payroll needs to be championing and really trying to see as their lens going forward to fit their careers. And I think because of the way that you're going to have this augmentation and this lift of work off of you, it should give you the opportunity to be able to return that time to other things. And that's where I think you're going to see a reshaping of the role. So I kind of numbered these here, but you could go in any order. But at the core of payroll, right, is it's always going to be a compliance center of expertise. That's where the company ought to be looking to the team to say, hey, what do we need to be thinking about with this decision, with that decision, with this plan or that plan? And making sure, obviously, the blocking and tackling every week of making sure the rules we're abiding by the rules, we're filing on time, we're paying people appropriately across all the places that we have to do that. And so that I think is foundational to payroll. The next thing that I think payroll is more increasingly being looked to, if it wasn't always, is delivering the modern pay experience. And again, this is not going to be something this is not what payroll is, and it's not necessarily payroll's job, but payroll is ultimately sort of the face to it, I think. And when you think of the modern pay experience, you should be thinking the pay and rewards, the total compensation, right? All that goes into that. Again, that's not something you own. That's something HR owns, but you're kind of the end result, right? You're where the rubber meets the road, if you will. Transparency and equity, right? They want to be able to know that this is accurate, that this is equitable, and that I'm being treated fairly, right? Everybody wants that. Choice of pay and timing and method, that's going to be really, really critical, right? We're seeing more of the earned wage access come online. We're seeing folks want maybe to be paid in Bitcoin or whatever, right? There's different flavors that folks want, and more companies are trying to create opportunities to personalize that experience through these things, and payroll is a big, big part of that. Financial wellness goes into that. There's a lot here, and again, payroll is only facilitating that. The next 2 things that I think payroll has to be very, very focused on is advising the organization and helping the company make good decisions. Now that's on the organization to bring you to the table and interact with you proactively, but some of that it might have to come from you nudging them and bringing your data and insights to the table and saying, hey, I've got a point of view. Let's have a conversation. Hey, here's some data. Let's have a conversation and begin that dialogue. One of the things we do in this research is we push on relationships to understand where better performing, strategically impacting payroll teams are performing, who are the highest performing. And one of the things that we find is when there's a relationship, a direct line relationship between payroll and the C-suite, when the senior executives are engaged and invested in payroll and are having conversations with them and investing and giving support, both monetarily but also culturally, they tend to have a far more agile outcome and a far more mature and far more impactful payroll operation. So there's something to that, and I think that you've got to get in front of your leaders and start showing your eminence and showing how you can impact their decision making. And again, that goes part and parcel with the compliance expertise. Up in the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see facilitating compliant access to skills and talent. More of your businesses, particularly global organizations, are already there, but more and more businesses, particularly even down market, are starting to look at talent beyond their borders. And so that means starting to do business in places that you weren't before. I don't know if any of you have been there where you've been told you find out you have taxes in a state you're not registered, but it's even worse if you find out something like that. Should you get that far down the road with an employee and you find out you've got this requirement that you didn't know you had before. So again, kind of going over here to the strategic initiatives, this is where payroll and HR and the business need to be working in lockstep to make sure that we're activating those plans in a compliant manner and making sure we're de-risking the business along that path. And then lastly, I think this is where in the bottom right corner, where the strategy impact or the strategic part of payroll can come from. And it's all about org agility, the ability for you to help your organization see around the next corner, taking all that immense data, which is sometimes the most rich in all of the organization and possibly underutilized, taking that rich payroll data in real time and being able to bring it to the table with you figuratively and match it with payroll, with business data, with HR data, with operational data, with external data. And now the company can see around the next corner and predict what to do and pivot and make small adjustments to where they're headed. So I think all of this is really, if you go back to my comments in the very beginning about payroll becoming really strategic advisors, right? Big Four advisors to their businesses. This is really, to me, what the technology should be enabling and companies should be investing in order to extract from payroll. The value and the strategy impacting impact that they can make is really about going to come from these 5 things. And so I think you've got to be enabled for this, but then you've also got to lean into this new role and say, look, we're not just going to be simple processors waiting to be sort of led by our organizations. We're strategic advisors that need to be leading our organizations. And I think when you adopt that mindset, you're just going to win, and you're going to show that you are, highly skilled business leaders that now have the technology to unleash your athleticism. So it gets me very excited because I see a lot of companies leaning into this and having a lot of success with it.
Well, Pete, all of these are, I would agree, are extremely important. And I've seen some organizations building out their payroll and calling it the center of excellence.
Yeah.
And so they're already labeled and defined, right? So you've already defined where you want to be the center of excellence. They've then built out the connections with the stakeholders, the senior leaders, as you talked about.
Very important.
We have a lot of stakeholders that are involved in the payroll processing, right? Anywhere from HR to equity to comp, all of those, mobility, all of those are people that we deal with. And so when they know payroll is a center of excellence, a global payroll center of excellence, when they decide to roll out a new comp change, a new benefit change, instead of rolling that out, and then payroll is on the cleanup crew to find out what it is, or people don't even understand, if we looked at compliance, the fact that this is a great benefit, but it's going to be taxable to that employee in that particular country, right? So having that piece or building that out, you are moving to that center of excellence, moving away from that manual work. You are somebody that they want to go to and be part of the team. And that feeds in anywhere from any comp, new hire changes around the world. Some organizations, as we know, they're searching for talent. So it doesn't matter what country you're in, we're going to hire that engineer to be able to do some skill set that's there. We have a lot of companies have growth on the mergers and acquisitions. What can your team do to provide that piece? So it's really providing and using our skills, looking from all of these aspects, from the risks to the compliance to the process, and then being agile enough to be scalability for the growth for our organization. So as you mentioned, it's a great time to be in payroll because it's exciting. We're not just moving something from A to B. We're providing and we're having insight to the organization. And so I'll say sometimes when you're new in the organization, or you might be younger in the profession, sometimes it takes the courage to say, I'm going to share, right? I'm going to share this. The worst thing that can happen is somebody can say, well, that's not a good idea for the company now. But if you don't do that, or you don't try to be involved with that, you two are not going to get the reward that you want. So really, all of you have that skill, you have the talent, it takes courage. You understand the piece of payroll involves globally kind of the heart of what's actually happening. You're the heart of the organization. Things don't happen without payroll. So let's move on. They don't happen. The world centers around us, right?
It should.
We are.
Well, let me actually, while the poll is going on, I'll give you a good analogy I like to use about payroll. We'll wait for the poll.
So we'll just launch our last poll before we go into our key takeaways. And while we're still on the topic of AI, it's just a final AI poll. So I wanted to find out from the audience today how far along they are in their organizations on their AI journey. Are you just starting out, so you're exploring your potential AI applications, early stages, some testing some AI tools? Intermediate, implementing AI, or you're at the advanced level with fully integrated? And I suppose it's important here to kind of note that AI might be coming from your vendor, and it might be in your vendor's technology. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, something your organization it's pushing. It's more that it's coming and being available to you through your vendor.
It should be native. You're right. It should be native. Anything worth buying now should be native for those things.
Exactly.
But that's a good point, Aoife, for them to ask their vendor, right? Because you want to make sure when you're out with market services that you have a competitive vendor that's staying current, right? We don't want somebody that's a provider that's back 15 years and haven't done any. If we just talk about technology, what have they done to expand their technology and services that they have? Because that helps us with the amount of manual work and pieces, and how we can get information from them to help our management to be strategic leaders, to be that center of excellence.
Yeah. Yeah, and be careful. There are a lot of solutions in all towers now that are popping up that are purely about AI.
Yeah.
And they don't have a lot of substance. So just be very careful. It should be more, it's much more than AI. AI is really just a cherry on top, honestly, to all the infrastructure that has to be built.
And the foundations are so important, and like it all starts with the data and where your data is, and having your data together and standardized. And that's key before you begin the journey, I think.
That's a great point. We just did a podcast on this on HR and Payroll 2.0. And one of the things we talked about were the 5 places that leaders need to focus this year. And one of the things we did hone in on was data health. Just the fact that really, at all times, you should be worried about data health. And I know payroll is great at that, but particularly before you get ready for any sort of transformation, but especially AI, if your data is not clean, you're just handing it, bad data, right? And we know what the result of that is. So data health, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, let's have a look at the results. It's quite
just starting.
Just starting.
Everyone's starting, which is totally absolutely perfect. I think everyone's in the same boat. Everyone is starting out.
And I think that's fair. I think it's exciting. It's fair. There's as Pete mentioned, there's podcasts out there. It's in the HR, the payroll space, even the finance space. Even if you listen to a webinar, read an article, it all helps you to kind of feel comfortable with that change, right? The change piece of it. And talking, like we already talked about, the vendors, they're going to be key too, so that we feel comfortable, because we're, at the end of the day, senior leadership is going to ask us questions, and how are we going to answer that question? So we need to be prepared for that question too.
Okay, we'll go. Back into our webinar and the key takeaways. Should be able to see the screen. Do you want,
let's go to the next slide with our takeaways.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Do you want to share these, Mary? How do you want to do it?
Yeah, we can share and you can add some insight. So when we talk about key takeaways, and if anybody's been in any session that I've taught, it's always like, after you've listened to a session, you went to a conference, there's always something that you should think about after, not today, think about it next week, put in 30 minutes on your calendar. And what does that mean? What information that was shared by Pete and myself that's pertinent to your company, or where do I need to explore? So looking at that. So we talked about technology, right? And how we're going to leverage that and not be afraid of it. It's happening. It's not going to change. We're going to have new technology that we don't even know what it is in our brain today, right? So who knows what's going to be there in 5 years? Pete wants a lawnmower that's going to mow his lawn. That's on his wish list. So we need
it's out there. It's out there.
It's out there, and it needs to be something he feels comfortable with. And just remember, that's an example of what do we feel comfortable with, right? So we want to make sure that we do that. We want to be champions, thinking about how we as employees in our organization, leaders in our organization, we want to champion. We want to not be afraid to bring up something that might be new or different. Ask questions, right? So all of us need to be able to be comfortable to say, I don't understand AI, right? It could be as simple as that. I don't understand what AI can do for me in our organization. Asking that question, I'm sure you're not the only person in your organization that thinks that. How are we going to talk about that? How are we going to be familiar with that, so that we can make sure we understand what we need in the organization, and then we can influence the impact in our organization as we move forward? explaining to different stakeholders what that means. We talked about the different stakeholders and the importance of being that center of excellence. Really looking at where you are today. Aoife brought up something about what's your current state? You know, what do you have today? What's the data look like today? You know, are you, and don't be afraid if there's things as you do your kind of data health check or your health check for the year, there's a long list of things that you need to look at. You are not the only person that I have reached out or I've talked to. The lists are long sometimes. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but let's understand what that is so that you can move forward. Sometimes it's a beginning discussion with your senior management, the senior leaders, to understand what's happening in your organization. Sometimes you grow so fast, you don't get the resources, the technology, or the talent. Your organization's growing so fast. And when we look at technology or the support you might need from other groups, be it IT or HR, if they're working on hiring employees and mergers and acquisitions and comp changes and all those things, you may only have limited time, and you may, as your growth happens, you may not have the resources. There's nothing wrong with pulling that out. And I have worked in organizations that at one point we just said, okay, we have to take a look at what's happened this last year. We can't continue down this path because we're going to burn out all the people we have today, and we want you, right? And so what changes do we need to do? What processes, what technology, evaluating those and putting a priority to them, right? Because we know we want everything today. It's a world that we live in. We want everything, but we have to kind of prioritize that. And I think because you all have great leverage and understanding the payroll space, you understand the importance of compliance, right? Every payroll professional in the world has the compliance piece, but really looking at what's going on with your data, what's working, tell your story, talk to others, maybe even in some cases get a mentor that can help you understand. Talk to the payroll service providers that are out there. There's also consultants that you can hire that you can talk to. Look at the articles and some of the blog things that Pete has that range from the HR space over into the payroll space. We can never, ever forget about our friends in HR. We have to build that partnership with them, and we recognize the importance they play in our organization, in your organization, and they need to recognize yours. And sometimes it's education as we move through that. So it really requires us, where do we want to be, kind of, and what's on our roadmap, and talking about it, right? And I will say in some organizations, the roadmap's large, and it could be scary. It could take years. Sometimes when we're working on, if we look on doing an HR HCM implementation, it could be a 3 to 5 year project, depending a 3 to 5 year project, depending on the size of your organization. So thinking about what that looks like, and the motivation and the change management and the confidence that we have to be able to have for that employee experience in our organizations, and how we continue to share with our leaders of what's actually happening. So Pete, we have any thoughts, other additional things on this slide as we build out our roadmap for our organization's future, but it also is your roadmap to you being shiny.
Yeah, I mean, I like at the bottom here, I think it really starts with a vision, right? I mean, you're a business leader, walk like a business leader, think like a business leader, have a vision like a business leader, and start to shape that conversation with your leadership team. So if you have a vision for what your payroll should be, that's why I think you use those relationships and your data to help shape that strategy, and then ultimately, your roadmap. And again, I think it's just an exciting time to be a payroll leader. You guys have phenomenal skills, soft skills, adaptability, creativity, design thinking, all of that. It's time now to take that and pair it with the technology and really make an impact. So be great. It's a good time to do it. And I think that payroll's got a lot of eyes and resources on it that it didn't have in the past. And we need that. And now it's time to lean into that. So I'm excited.
It's your time. So take it.
It is.